This is a teen movie, and teens love it! Now let's roll on this!
You very likely will become a big star from risky business. Are you ready to handle teenage adulation?
If people thought Tom Cruise had fallen out of fashion as a movie star, they had to rethink that statement entirely when Top Gun Maverick grossed almost $1.5 billion at the box office this year. It was the biggest gross for any movie he's ever been a part of. While it's no surprise that his films make box office gold, this one cemented his legacy as the biggest movie star in the world. What people may forget is that it wasn't always that way. Early in his career, he played bit parts in movies like Endless Love and Taps. The very first time he got top billing was in a movie that most people have forgotten about. A quirky sex comedy called Losin It came out in 1983, but soon faded from memory. While it made the cable TV rounds in the mid-80s, it failed to make any sort of mark, especially in the storied career of Tom Cruise. That could be because his star-making role in Risky Business would be out in 6 months, so what happened to this forgotten film from Tom Cruise's resume? Let's find out. What the fuck happened to this movie? Cruise had booked a few films, but he hadn't quite made that jump to leading man. He had it in his mind that he was going to be able to act for the rest of his life, and he set out to find out the best movies he could expand his depth as an actor. His agents at the time gave him all sorts of projects to jump into so he could get work as an actor, but Cruise was being selective. Rumor is he turned down an opportunity to be in the movie The Amityville Horror 3. Maybe he did have a knack for driving his career forward after all. He was given a script for the movie Losin It, and his agents told him to go for it. Even though he didn't really like it, he decided to go ahead and make the film since his friend Jackie Earle Haley would be one of the leads. The film was yet another teen sex comedy that had become so popular after films like Meatballs and Porky had scored big at the box office. This new genre had been a big hit and made the studios tons of money. Every film company wanted a teen sex comedy. This would lead to a flood of horny teenagers showing up on the screen. Cruise was uncomfortable with the subject matter, but was more upset that the movie just wasn't all that good on the page. He was going off of his focused plan of how he wanted to present himself as an actor. He would later say in an interview, "Then my agents at the time wanted me to do Losing It, which was a teenage sex film. I felt uncomfortable with the subject matter, but the agent said, do it, it's good for your career." As it turned out, it was, because I learned a lot of things, including what kind of movies to avoid. When I first read it, it was worse than the released film. I worked hard, but it was a terrible time in my life. Ouch. In Losing It, Cruise plays Woody, alongside Haley as Dave, John Stockton as Spider, and John P. Navin as Wendell. They decide after school lets out that they should drive down to Tijuana, Mexico to fulfill their most primal urges. Woody is usually a straight-laced guy, but he finally wants to lose his virginity. The others decide to tag along to get into their own sort of fun. As they stop by a local grocery store to stock up on snacks for the ride, they witness the shop owner and his wife get into an argument after she finds out he's been cheating on her. As the guys are leaving with their shoplifted items, the wife Kathy, played by Shelley Long, jumps into the car with them and decides to travel to get a quickie divorce from her soon-to-be ex-husband. Once they all cross the border, Dave drops his car off to get some work done before everyone ventures off. Wendell is tasked with staying with the car to make sure the mechanic doesn't do anything against Dave's wishes for his precious car. Eventually, Wendell gets tired of this and wanders off on his own to fulfill his own desires. Fireworks. But he wants to buy a bunch of illegal fireworks and then take them back to his middle school so he can sell them to all his classmates for a high profit margin. Dave, Woody, and Spider end up at a brothel, but Woody can't go through with all of his original plans. Later at the bar, Spider and Woody get into an argument after Kathy finds them after a trip to a divorce lawyer. This causes everyone to split up and go on their own adventures. Spider seeks out a donkey show, don't ask, but gets into a bar fight with some US soldiers on leave. He ends up thrown into a Tijuana jail. Woody and Kathy walk around discussing what they both really want out of life. Dave and Wendell end up getting chased by a bunch of local thugs after Dave makes a big mistake with one of their sisters. This all culminates with them meeting up once again in order to escape the local authorities and get back over the border into the United States. The film itself is nothing special. There are better sex comedies made before and after this film came out. One of them came out right before and tackled almost the exact same plot. The Last American Virgin had a group of teenagers who want to lose their virginity, so they find a sex worker willing to help them out. The film then covers the consequences of becoming an adult in a much darker tone than Losin It. It just doesn't have the heart that other films would end up gaining from their subject matter. The New York Times said, quote, "The film would have had certain unity if it had remained on the opening note of uncomplicated foolishness." And they're correct. The opening of the film would give the viewer reason to believe that what we're about to see is a hilarious road trip movie that might end up with a little heart. The boys are planning the road trip to Mexico only to find out that one of them can't go. It's revealed that he told his parents about the trip and they grounded him. We're shown that Haley's Dave can't put up with this nonsense and takes his anger out on a poor trash can nearby. When others start to reveal their own bad news, he again takes it out on the trash can. This leads viewers to believe that Dave will be a quirky character with interesting reactions that we'd be seeing throughout the runtime. But this is really the only time we're given anything this exciting. He does fine in the rest of the movie, but lands more of an aloof character who's searching for Spanish fly. Again, don't ask. This leads to other, more modern problems in the film. The men in this film are obviously obsessed with sex and what it means to them to score. Pretty much every woman in the film is only there to be a possible conquest of every man in the film. Even Shelley Long's character, Kathy, doesn't really have that much to do throughout the film. She leaves her cheating husband to go to Mexico to file for divorce. Once there, she then becomes a background character until she and Woody go off on their own. Then, her job is to let him know that he doesn't want to sleep with a prostitute. He wants a wholesome girl like the one he left back home. But before that can even register as a character arc, Woody and Kathy get a hotel room and sleep together, fulfilling his initial mission of going to Mexico in the first place. After Woody learns his important lesson, and more importantly loses his virginity, she ends up seeing her cheating husband has come down to Mexico to look for her because he wants her back. She happily runs directly back into his arms. This destroys any agency she had in the film. It shows that all she needed to do was forgive him for being a cheating jerk. All of her problems would be fixed. The other big problem is Dave searching for the elusive Spanish fly, a pill that will make any woman ready to throw themselves at him. Characters keep telling him that it's not a real thing, but he insists it is. When a local conman convinces him he can get him some, he doesn't hesitate a bit to take him up on that offer. It's obvious to just about everyone but Dave that this guy is ripping him off. When Dave is given the magic pill, he tries to use it on one girl, but the scene plays out as a problematic beat in the modern era. He tries to drop it in her drink without her noticing. While the effects of the pill are supposed to only make her more aroused, it brings up all sorts of awful ideas about how modern date rape drugs are used. This makes Dave less of an endearing, horny goofball and more of a sleazy date rapist. The girl's brother does find out and proceeds to try and teach Dave a lesson, but he's able to escape his captors and return to his ways at a later date. After all, he still thinks he has 5 more pills he can use on unsuspecting victims.
I mean, you come to Mexico to do things you wouldn't do in your own country. Pussies!
Many would be surprised to learn that the director of the film would go on to become an Oscar winner. None other than Curtis Hanson directed this sophomore road trip romp. Even if you don't know his name, you have seen many of his films. He racked up acclaim for films like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, LA Confidential, Wonder Boys, and the Eminem film 8 Mile. The film has a couple of shots that show that some thought went into them, but overall the look of the film is quite basic. This could attribute to its low budget. Since it was a non-union film with such a low budget, they had to use crew members in certain scenes as actors. Others working on the film didn't want their name on it at all, as it would jeopardize their union standing. They shot the film in Calexico, California, and hired a lot of local people from the area. Some were even given speaking parts in the film. The character of Wendell was originally supposed to be a female character. She was originally just called Wimp in the script. The trade paper Daily Variety listed the part as a female of small stature with definite star quality. They listed child star Christy McNichol as the template for the character. They rewrote it and named the character Wendell, but kept the Wimp in as a nickname for the character. The art department covered up most of the storefronts on the main street with period-looking facades. The film starts with a comedic "a long time ago in a high school not so far away," but doesn't outright state that it actually takes place in 1965. Because of this, the already stretched budget had to accommodate transforming any location into a period setting. Any vehicles had to be changed out. The Model A that ends up in the film was borrowed from local residents, and it ended up being a giant pain. The suspension was so bad by the end of the shoot, the car was dragging on the ground. The crew worked on the film 6 nights a week for 6 weeks. The only night they had off were Sundays, so they would drive into Mexico to go dancing at the nightclub. One night while the cast and crew were blowing off some steam, Tom Cruise began dancing with a girl. Her boyfriend didn't take too kindly to this unknown pretty boy moving in. He slipped on a pair of brass knuckles and started to make his way towards Cruise. Some of the other actors noticed this and ran over to intervene. They were able to grab the actor and pull him out of the nightclub. Wonder if that guy ever realized that he was about to mess up one of the most famous faces in the world. The film debuted on April 22nd, 1983. It pretty much died there as well. It was in direct competition with films like Flashdance, Sony's own teen sex comedy Spring Break, and another film with Cruise in it, The Outsiders. Critics weren't big fans of the film either, stating that while the film had a few interesting moments, it just seemed boring. The film would be released in Brazil as Porky 3 to cash in on the popularity of the Porky's films. This entry must have seemed awfully tame in comparison to the previous films in the series. Even with that push in foreign markets, the movie failed to make much of a dent in its budget. The cost of the film is rumored to have been around $7 million. It would end up making just over $1 million at the box office. It quickly died and was pulled out of theaters only to end up on late night cable rotation. There may have been enough nudity in the film to justify putting it in the usual raunchy late night slot, but fans would end up disappointed in the film itself. The film would get the usual home video release, with the latest being a bare bones Blu-ray release from Kino Lorber. While it isn't the worst addition to the teen sex comedy genre, it also doesn't stand as one of the best either. Cruise would go on to be a mega superstar. Shelley Long would be a TV star not long after on Cheers. Weirdly, John P. Navin Jr. would have the honor of being the first customer to walk through the doors of the bar on the show. He's caught using a fake ID and Sam turns him right away. John Stockwell would go on to other notable 80s movies like Christine, My Science Project, and even re-teaming with Cruise in Top Gun. He would move behind the camera and become a director and producer. Jackie Earle Haley would have his ups and downs in Hollywood, but would finally get recognized as a true talent in the early 2000s with films like Little Children and Watchmen. If nothing else, in the film, we can see Cruise give a performance with some vulnerability and mild depth to him, whereas now all we want is to know what crazy stunt he's going to pull off in the next Mission Impossible movie. Since the legacy sequels are a thing now, maybe we can get the team back together and find out what the guys are up to. Who got fat, who got bald, and who's still searching for Spanish fly.
Do you remember when fame hit?
Do you remember your life changing?
Yeah, I did, right after Risky Business, and then Top Gun.
I think people are really going to know who Tom Cruise is. Are you ready for what could be instant fame for you?
Yeah, 3-year instant fame. I just try to focus in on my craft, and that's the most important thing in my life. So.